Hi there, it's Emma and welcome to Sax Bites, the podcast that's going to make you a better saxophone player in just 5 minutes. Today we are tackling the tongue. It's something that as a teacher I get really frustrated dealing with because I can't see it. I can't see what my students are doing with their tongue, so then I have to figure out what's going on just by listening to them play. So this episode comes from a clarinet student that I had recently, and it got me thinking about the way that I explain tongue position and then the way students actually interpret that. So when we're tonguing on a single reed, a lot of students grasp, okay, I need tip of my tongue to touch just below the tip of the reed, and that's how I tongue. And they think about tonguing as the placement of the tongue on the reed. But what they forget is that when your tongue's on the reed, no sound is coming out. You've dampened the vibrations of the reed. So actually, thinking about tonguing as the release of the tongue off the reed is kind of a good little mental shift to make to understanding tonguing. If we think about, all right, I want to release my tongue effectively so that the reed is able to start vibrating again, you start to think about what your air's doing in that equation, not just the tongue. Is the air fast enough behind the tongue so that it can get the reed to start vibrating again at the appropriate speed to get a good sound? This is really important because a lot of saxophone students and some clarinets will end up kind of inadvertently slap tonguing. And that could be a case of too much tongue on the reed or a suction being created because their airflow isn't where it needs to be when they release their tongue off the reed. They're getting that pop effect. So my top tip for you today is, well, that's kind of an inadvertent tip. It wasn't the focus of the tip. But thinking about the way we conceptualize tonguing, that's tip number one, unexpected tip number one. But the real tip that I wanted to get to is to think about where your tongue rests after it's released from tonguing. Where is your tongue going back to? Where is its default position when it's not on the reed, when it's not tonguing? Because for a lot of students, that position that they go back to is a tongue pulled very far back in the mouth. In some cases, so far back, you can actually sort of see it in the bottom of their throat and under their chin there. In others, it's subtle, but you can hear in their sound that their tongue is so far pulled back that it's actually affecting the pitch and the intonation, and their tone color is a little dull. So what we want to aim for is minimal movement of the tongue muscle. That means you're keeping your tip of your tongue very close to the reed as you release from tonguing. So I recommend right now that you give it a go, just kind of in the air, or if you've got a saxophone mouthpiece handy, try tonguing really slowly and figuring out how far away your tongue is pulling from the reed and seeing if you can keep it a little closer. The closer your tongue is to the reed, the less movement it has to make to tongue, which means the less work the muscle has to do, which means you are able to tongue faster. It's kind of the secret, I think, for tonguing faster, for me definitely, has been keeping my tongue really, really close to the reed, making sure my tongue does the minimal movement possible. Because we all know if a muscle's not moving that much, it's not going to get tired that quickly. Anyone who's trained at the gym knows if you're not doing much work on one particular muscle, it can go for a while before getting tired. So have a little experiment with that. See how you can figure out what you're doing with your tongue and have a little experiment and then have a chat with your teacher about it. Because when students are more aware and able to verbalize what they think their tongue is doing and what things feel like, your teacher will be able to diagnose things and work with you to improve your tonguing. Okay, I think a little bit of a shorter episode today. I've been going well over the 6-minute mark for quite a few episodes now, and this is meant to be a 5-minute podcast. So I'm leaving you with that little tonguing tip today. If you have any questions, please do put them in the comments, leave us a review, send us an email. We really want to do a listener questions episode very soon. Until next time, this has been Sax Bites, the 5-minute saxophone lesson podcast. Bye-bye.